Welcome to the Eye on Annapolis Local Business Spotlight. There are thousands of locally owned businesses in the area, some small and some large. Some you may know and others you don't. But one thing they all have in common is a great story, and we want to share it with you. Join us every Saturday as we talk to the founders, the owners, and the managers of local businesses you have come to know and love, and those you will come to know and love. Now here's your host, John Frenay, with this week's Local Business Spotlight.
All right, today we're sitting here in a podcast studio where the Leading Lady podcast is recorded in a place called the Leading Lady Coaching Collective. We're going to talk about yoga, and I'm not sure I've ever been more out of place than I am today, but we are here with Julie Blamphin, who is a friend and a wonderful bon vivant around town. You are a writer, a speaker, and founder of Stretch Your Spirit. I want to say yoga, but it's not. It's just Stretch Your Spirit, period, right?
That's right, John. Yep.
Like I say, more importantly, I do consider you a friend. We walked in and we hugged and supposed to, shaking hands and nice to meet you and
That's
exchanging
right.
business cards and everything else. We've known each other for years. StretchYourSpirit.com is the website. So tell me about it. I mean, ever since I've met you way back when, and I don't remember where it is, and I probably don't care to even think about how many years it's been, but I've known that you've been a yogi?
Yogi.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So tell me about Stretch Your Spirit.
Well, let me start from the beginning. I was raised in a school of gymnastics. I started practicing yoga when I was 4. I started teaching when I was 12. My mom had...
Is there a law against that or something?
Probably. It came so naturally. That's where I was raised. That's what I knew. I was working with really little, teeny tiny little gymnasts, actually Special Olympians, who would come to our gym to practice their routines. But the ones that I worked with privately, one-on-one, were the kids who weren't using the bars and the beam because they had physical disabilities. And they would sit on the floor exercise mat with me, and we'd work on stretching and balance and strength and yoga. So that's how long I've been practicing yoga, and it just seemed natural when I moved into entrepreneurship that I founded a business on yoga.
What kind of drugs were you taking that decided to put you into entrepreneurship?
I know, right? I know. We were just talking about how busy we are.
It is the most rewarding thing in the world, but it's also the most stressful thing in the world.
It is.
And it's sort of a hard to figure out exactly what the balance is there.
It is. It is.
But I do imagine that yoga probably does help with that balance, right?
It sure does. Yeah. Thank goodness for practice. Thank goodness for yoga. But I like to call what I teach yoga in real life, because we can go to a class, we can carve an hour or more out of our schedule. We can get in the car, drive through the rain, find parking, unroll a mat that costs $100, get into the yoga clothes that cost more than that, pay for a class, take that time, and it's wonderful. Or we can just practice on our own during our day along the way for those quick little wellness wins, I like to say. And we can feel balanced and strong and flexible along the way. This is why I call it yoga in real life, because it's happening all the time.
So you're sort of an advocate of not necessarily having the 8:45 a.m. yoga class, per se. Is that correct? Am I hearing that right? Or that you can supplement that?
You can totally supplement that. I don't teach groups that often anymore. I host international retreats once a year, maybe twice a year, and I am speaking at different workshops here and there. But teaching classes on a regular basis, unless it's private one-on-one yoga practice, then I'm not teaching classes per se. I feel that it's more valuable for me to keep preaching about what I teach my private clients, and that is yoga in real life, because they're living. They're busy. They feel this way one day. They feel that way another day. And there is something within the yoga tradition that can help to keep them balanced and strong and flexible, mind, body, and spirit every day.
Well, we are all overscheduled, and we joked about that before we started recording and everything else. And our lives throughout my life and your life and everybody has gotten busier and busier and busier. I mean, the to-do lists are getting longer and longer and longer. What can yoga do for a person?
When I first wake up, John, I don't pop right out of bed and
check the emails.
Right. Right. I don't do that. Well, sometimes I do. I take a moment to breathe, to just take one deep breath, and I move my body in such a way that I'm feeling just a little bit more ready to actually stand on my feet to move into the day. Some of us just wake up and just we just fly out of bed and run down the hall looking for coffee, but you can actually wiggle around in bed, get into a little yoga pose, maybe child's pose, which is the knees are under the body. Your heart is facing down, and you just move into this little space to stretch your ankles, knees, hips, stretch your back. You can go onto your side. You can reach your knees up towards your chest. You can do a long body stretch. I mean, think about all the ways in which you move your body when you want a nice stretch. That's yoga.
You know, it's funny. You mentioned that about first thing in the morning, and I do that myself, and I'm going to say I do yoga. But, you know, I get up in the morning before I do get out of bed. I will like raise my legs and point the toes and,
Excellent.
get the calves moving and stuff like that. And primarily so I don't fall down when I stand on my feet.
Exactly. Me too. Right.
But, you know, it does. It really – and I am guilty of, we'll grab the phone, we'll do this stuff and everything else. But, to be able to sit there and get ready to attack your day, it really makes a difference.
It really does make a difference. Not only does it help you stretch your body physically to feel more grounded once you stand up on your feet, it helps you to connect with yourself. Instead of connecting outside of yourself, going to the phone, going to the computer, going to the schedule in your mind, the to-do list in your mind, it helps you to connect with your body. And that's pretty much the definition of yoga, John. Yeah. The definition of yoga is union, connecting mind and body and spirit. That's the definition of yoga. So we do that all the time, but we can actually do that in an intentional way. And that's my preach.
That's pretty cool. Well, it sounds to me like you're less of a yoga instructor. Correct. And much more of a lifestyle consultant or a wellness consultant, leader, evangelist, crazy, wacky woman.
Right. All of the above. For sure. Yeah. I consider myself a teacher. I definitely consider myself a teacher. I was raised by my mother. And her wisdom is just so profound and wild and wonderful. And I learned so much from her from a very, very young age. So I've been teaching wellness and movement and inward focus. I was a gymnast, for God's sake. I mean, there's a lot of focus in that sport. And it's just so yogic that this is why I'm here. I've been doing it ever since I was a kid.
Did you do anything before this, before you jumped into – what did you do before your entrepreneurship?
I did. I had my undergraduate degree in speech pathology. And so I was working supporting federal employees with disabilities in the U.S. Department of Education. I did that for 6 or 7 years and then sold my house. I lived in Baltimore, sold my house and quit my job and moved to Spain because that's what you do.
Wow. Okay.
And then when I came back to the States, I founded Stretch Your Spirit. And that's when I went full throttle and all in on my entrepreneurship with yoga.
What happened in Spain?
I wandered. I did a whole bunch of writing. I organized all my poetry. I took all my poetry, all my journals and all the cocktail napkins that I wrote poetry on and all these random poems on all these sheets of paper. And I actually put them together into a collection when I was over there. And I did a whole lot more writing too, but I did a whole lot of wandering.
Very cool.
Yeah, it was a great year.
That's ballsy, but good.
It was super ballsy. Yeah, it was awesome.
Good on you. Good on you. What is the biggest I mean, okay, we've seen the memes and stuff. Okay, look, the downward dog. And you've got all the cartoons and all the funny little videos that you see in yoga classes and everything else. What's the biggest misconception that most people have about yoga?
That's a really great question, John. I hear so many myths about yoga. I hear folks saying, oh, well, I can't practice yoga because I'm not flexible. And I said, well, that's why you should be practicing yoga. Or I can't practice yoga because I have no time. And I'm here to tell you that we're all yogis. We're all born connecting our mind to our body because the mind and the body are connected. So you're constantly practicing that connection. And again, that's the definition of yoga. So for the misconception of, all right, I have to get stretchy pants, I have to have a mat, I have to actually go somewhere, pay $20 or whatever the rate is to walk into a class. That's a misconception. Yoga is you connecting with you moving through a pose, you practicing a breath technique, you saying no when somebody asks you to do something. Yeah, it's just you giving yourself what you need, mind, body, spirit.
There was a Brian Johnson who used to be a physical trainer. I don't know whether he's still in town or not, but he told me at one point, he says the biggest misconception about physical personal training and working out and stuff like that is that you need to join a gym. He says, you give me 2 gallons of milk and I'll whip your ass into shape.
That's right.
So you sit there and you think about how yoga, I mean, as you mentioned, you can do yoga in the 10 minutes before you get out of bed.
Exactly.
So the time is not an issue.
Time's not an issue.
I mean, I'm sure you can do it on a boring Zoom call. Just put the camera off and
Absolutely, yeah. A lot of my clients are on Zoom. A lot of my private clients, they're not all here in Annapolis, Maryland. They're all around the country. And so you mentioned, and that triggered something that I want to say. So it's interesting because you're thinking about doing yoga, and my preach is practice. Like practice is my preach. If you can practice taking an extra 5 deep breaths before you pop out of bed in the morning, I can guarantee that you're going to start feeling more clear. You're going to probably get more shit done every day. I'm allowed to say that.
Yep.
You're probably going to feel a little bit more energized when you wake in the morning. You might be getting rid of the sleepy cobwebs much more effectively. But we don't do yoga. It's not about poses. It's not something that we do. It's something that we practice. It's almost like a way of life. I mean, it is for me. It's a way of life. So
it's just a mindset.
It's a mindset. Yeah.
So we should all listen to our Apple Watches a little bit more when it says, hey, take time and breathe.
Sure. Absolutely.
That's a misconception that I think I may have, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on yoga and this type of thing, is that it is really sort of a female-dominated sport. I talked to Nicole Kelch around the corner from the Ballet Theater of Maryland, and she said, yeah, we've got like 74 females and like 9 men. Mm-hmm. I mean, is that true with yoga? I mean,
That's a great point you bring up. Thousands of years ago when yoga first began, we understand that it began
with the bearded Chinese guy,
by men, right? Women weren't even allowed to practice yoga. So the fact that it's now more popular among women might be the case. However, so many men practice yoga. I have a few men in my private clientele who have been with me for years. One who's been with me for 6 years. Another who's been with me for 4. I've got a couple of couples who work with me as well, and a couple of couples who have been on my retreats, in my couples retreats. So the fact that there might be this misconception out there that it's just a female practice is just unfounded. Right.
I'll tell you, back when we first met, and I may have my name wrong, but you did a thing and you sort of alluded to it, but I think it was called like the Wild Woman Weekend or something along those lines that you had organized probably back in the 2010s or something like that. Are you still doing and you mentioned that you're doing retreats. I mean, is this still going on?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I love to encourage women to be really authentic and vulnerable. We talk about sexuality. We talk about the pelvic floor. That's one of my specialties, core and pelvic floor. We dance, we sing, we lie on the ground under the full moon. My last retreat was called Awaken Your Wild Woman. Yes, I've had a number of workshops that have to do with play and all sorts of movement and conversation around our authenticity.
Are you focused purely on women then?
The majority of my clientele are women, and my online program is geared to midlife and menopausal women. But again, I do work with plenty of men.
Well, what's a typical retreat like, or isn't there one?
Oh my gosh, retreats are so amazing. I mean, just go out there and put Stretch Your Spirit reviews. Just put that in Google and look at the reviews, the testimonials. It's so fascinating reading some of the memories and some of the aha moments that these women have when we go on retreat. And men, like I said, I've done couples retreats as well. Retreats, gosh, it's so hard to explain what happens on retreat. It's so beautiful. It's just so beautiful what happens. There's just so much truth and trust and calm and energy. It's really quite something.
You know, it's as you look at life in general, I mean, anytime you can get away from the real world is a bonus. And I've been through not your type of retreats, but I've been through Leadership Anne Arundel, and they had these opening retreats and closing retreats. And, you know, initially it's like, oh, here's the guy. He's going to make us like talk to strangers that we don't know who they are, and they're going to make us do silly little things. And by the end of this thing, you guys are bonded. You've found some crazy, goofy thing that you've been able to bond. And I imagine that's probably very similar with this. So, I mean, you come back from this retreat, whether it may be a weekend or a week or, you know, maybe – do you do a month-long retreat? You know, we wish, right?
Yeah, that would be amazing.
But, you know, you've got to come back with a fresh set of minds. You mentioned the aha moments that are probably very different for every single person that goes there. And it does make, you know, anytime you go to like a corporate retreat or training or something like that, when you do have a facilitator, which is what you are, everybody's going to get something out of it, and you sort of know the pathway that you're looking to go, so it makes it very easy for people to follow right along.
Yeah. I take my role in these Stretch Your Spirit retreats very seriously, and yet I know that once we get there, I can also, just like they're doing, I can also just feel calm and feel like I can settle into the space and the week or the moment or the day and really enjoy myself as well and feel that I'm among this community of women who aren't judging me, which for me that took practice because when I was young I was bullied by girls. So it's been a really amazing experience, not just for the women coming on Stretch Your Spirit retreats, but for me as well as the guide.
On your retreats, are age-wise, I mean, I know you said you focus on the premenopausal and the menopausal women and the perimenopausal and all those other menopausal words that they've got. Is that your sweet spot as far as the age goes, and you know, the 40s into the early 50s or something? I mean, you're not getting some octogenarians that are out there, or some, you know, 25-year-old girls that are girls. Boy, that's a sexist term, isn't it?
Is it? I don't know.
But you know, you don't have some 25-year-olds and some octogenarians, right? I mean, you're sort of in that middle of the road.
The majority of the women who come with me on retreat are 40s, 50s, but I have had 30-somethings at the same time that my mom was my co-leader. My mom's 83, and she's a total badass, and she's still just right there. And she was teaching her program in the water. She calls it Shine, and the ladies loved it. But I had literally a group of 18 women, and the ages were mid-30s, maybe young 30s. And I had mom at 83, and then I had about 5 or 6 who were late 60s and 70s. Yeah, it's quite a variety of women from all over and all ages, all experiences. And you're right, when you connect with that stranger, like that's one of the things that women are really nervous about. That's one of the things that they tell me is one of their concerns before they come. Oh, I don't know anybody. I'm going to feel so awkward. I might need to room with somebody I don't know. And I'm like, listen, I get it. Come anyway. And then when they get back,
they got a new BFF.
They've got a new BFF. That is the most profound aspect of the retreat, is feeling that level of trust and gaining that level of trust with somebody new. It's
Well, they
fantastic.
say that most people's biggest fear is public speaking, is to get up in front of a crowd and like making a jerk out of yourself. Some people make a career out of it. But also meeting strangers. I mean, we were taught from little kids, stay away from strangers.
Yeah.
They're bad. They're bad. Most strangers are very helpful.
Yeah.
In reality,
Yeah.
there are a few bad eggs. But
Right.
How often do you do your retreats?
I have had 6 retreats so far. I have another one that's scheduled for next spring. My next women's retreat is next spring, and you can find that on my website, stretchyourspirit.com. I am going to have a meeting shortly here in, I think, a week with a couple of my clients who want me to do another retreat this year. So stay tuned. There might be another retreat happening this year.
How frequently do you do the couple retreats?
I had 3 couples retreats. I haven't done one since before the pandemic.
Okay.
The first one I did after the pandemic was the women's retreat.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was this past fall, and then I just had another women's retreat here in the spring.
Ah, awesome.
Yeah.
You did mention that you have an online course.
I do.
What's that all
Yes.
about?
My online course is, like I was talking about in the beginning of our chat here, yoga in real life. Again, there are so many practices that we can roll out our mat, get on that mat for 1 hour. I'm here to tell you that you are already practicing in some way, and I'm going to show you how, and I'm going to show you how you can practice more during your day at different times. Maybe you only have 10 minutes, maybe you only have 2. And I'm going to show you ways that you can practice moving your body or being still and just breathing and focusing to help to give you daily wellness wins over and over and over.
That can be had at stretchyourspirit.com, right?
Yes.
And you can
Yes.
sign up for there. What is the biggest tip for a non-yoga person
Yoga.
to be more mindful, more well, feel better about themselves? I mean, you mentioned, get in bed, I can't remember what you called it. I'm going to call it
Child's pose.
Okay, I was going to
Yep,
call it the
yep.
fetal position.
Yeah, yeah.
But similar.
Very similar.
But or do something. I mean, what is one thing that somebody can do that is not practicing yoga at this point that will make a difference for them? For most people.
Yeah. I think that as soon as I give you permission to stand in the shower in that hot water and reach up with the left arm and then reach up with the right arm, and it can be as simple as that, but realize how you can move your body wherever you are living your life. This is why I call it yoga in real life, because you can do that. The biggest objection I hear, I can't practice yoga, I don't have any time. And that's all we've got is time. So during your days at different times, just move your body or stop moving your body and be still for a bit and to see how it can help your level of wellness.
Well, we live in an area that is very congested, and some people have hellacious commutes. Can you do yoga in a car?
Absolutely. You can do
There
yoga
you
in
go.
the car.
There's your hour that you need.
That's right. Kitchen, car. I do yoga in the airport, on a plane. Absolutely. You can practice yoga anywhere.
That's awesome. Do you do speaking at all?
I do.
You do?
I am speaking. I've been on a bunch of podcasts. I am the guest speaker at different events locally and internationally. I've been on Facebook groups and podcasts around the world. I love to speak. I love to share the message about how well we can stay every day in some way. So, again, you can find that information about my speaking on stretchyourspirit.com.
You're a true evangelist. I'll tell you what, before we wrap it up, and one last thing that I've got on my little to-do list here is that I did go to stretchyourspirit.com before I came over here. And I clicked on the bio and it said, you can, quote, whistle like a champ. So now it's time to put your money where your mouth is as we wrap it up. Julie Blamphin. Let's hear it. That's awesome. I didn't know whether it was a whistle. I didn't know whether it was a cat call or whether it was like a happy tune.
I can whistle. You should hear my mom whistle.
Is that a something that you learned in your youth?
It is, yeah. I've been whistling a long time.
Do you always have to have your fingers in your mouth to whistle, or can
No.
you do the whole?
No.
You can do the.
I can whistle. Yeah, I can whistle songs. I can whistle with my toes.
Do you do it? Do you do it a lot? Do you find yourself doing it?
I do. Yeah, I do whistle a lot. Yeah, it's like my boyfriend knows my whistle. My family has a whistle.
That sounds great.
I know. He didn't like it in the beginning, but we've been together 12 years. He's used to it. If I can't find him somewhere, and I will whistle, he knows where to find me. I also have hearing loss, so a whistle is really helpful for me to find where you are, because often I can't hear you calling me because I only have one ear that works, so I don't know locationally where the sound is coming from. So if I can whistle, he can find me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so that works for us. But I was raised with whistling. My family has a family whistle. I remember when I was a kid, my grandparents.
Dinner's ready.
Exactly.
Get your ass home.
Exactly.
Fantastic. Julie Blamphin, thank you so much for your time today. Congratulations on your entrepreneurial journey. I'm so glad that you went to Spain and got your spirit together. And for folks that are interested, which you should be, go check out stretchyourspirit.com, and maybe a retreat is in the works, or maybe you just need to find a couple minutes to practice yoga and be a different person.
That is wonderful. Thanks for that. Quick plug there, John. I appreciate that, and I appreciate talking to you as always. It's a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to this week's Local Business Spotlight. Please make sure to visit eyeonannapolis.net for all your local news, events, and opinion. And in case you haven't already, please subscribe to the Eye on Annapolis Daily News Brief, where we bring you all the day's local news direct to your phone, tablet, or computer in about 10 minutes. It comes to you at 6 a.m. every Monday through Friday, and you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.